Hi, this is Nicholas Chen, and this is my vlog on Alto's Adventure. Alto's Adventure's visual design is one of the strongest points of the game. Initially, it was the most standout factor when playing. The beautiful backgrounds, moving and changing environments, the soft color scheme all expresses the game's casual and laid-back aesthetic. As you go from run to run, the changing weather and time of day helps keep visuals fresh, even with multiple runs. I've found myself both wanting to continue playing the game, and also just wanting to sit at the main menu, watching the rainfall and lightning strike at the mountains in the distance. The background visuals are even incorporated in the gameplay, with goal challenges including playing the game at nighttime, or even playing through a storm. Along with the aesthetic is the sonic design. The soundtrack is pushing, yet doesn't feel too intense for the game's casual nature. When you lose at the game, it doesn't feel very jarring, softening the sting of loss. The audio cues for each action are distinct as well, helping the player feedback. The chimes of coins that grow higher in pitch when you collect more consecutively add to the satisfaction of picking them up, prompting the player to try and match the more difficult sequences of coins or collect as many as possible. The sounds are distinct from each other too, the ice scraping making up for the hard visibility of the terrain, the soft slapping noises of llamas which help mark your progress, the bounce off the rock, a typically surprising event, helping the player recognize that they're given more airtime. Sonically, this game helps keep the laid-back aesthetic, while also pushing impertinent information to the player in real time. As with most mobile games, the controls are simple, but Alto's Adventure is even simpler than most infinite runners. The controls are simply tapping to jump and holding spin in the air. The main draw comes from timing when to jump and getting full flips before landing. To this end, timing jumps and holding onto spins can become tense, stressful even, when trying to cross chasms or land upright after a long jump. Although the controls are incredibly simple, there's still skill expression in understanding the physics of jumping and tense moments of righting oneself when landing. The sequence of not knowing the full consequences of your jump timing, then landing perfectly, leads to satisfying and addicting gameplay. Mechanically, Alto's Adventure is deceptively deep. The multiple systems it does have connect with each other in surprisingly deep ways. There are only two real tricks to pulling off in this game, sans the flying suit as I didn't play enough to reach it, which are grinding and flipping. Grinding takes place on elevated terrain, and as a result, leads into higher jumps, which leads into flipping. The more trick points you score, the faster your character goes. At the same time, the player must avoid rocks, chasms, and elders. Rocks are avoided by jumping over, testing reaction time, but they can also be destroyed by the speed boost after landing a trick or going on ice. Sometimes a speed boost is necessary to cross chasms, which require the player to jump at the correct time with enough speed to jump the gap between cliffs. The last two mechanics aren't explicitly explained to players, but they find out through natural and emergent gameplay, leading to better learning of the game's systems. The greatest mechanic, in my opinion, is the Elder, which chases you until the next chasm. The player must artfully weave tricks in and gain speed in order to avoid getting hit by the Elder, all followed by a tense climatic jump across the chasm to escape. This is the major mechanic of gameplay all interplaying with each other in a masterful sequence, making an addictive and exciting gameplay in an otherwise laid-back game. The depth of gameplay can be attributed not only to interplaying mechanics, but the lack of explicitness on the mechanics themselves. The few mechanics in the game that are explicit are the rocks and chasm, which mean an instant loss if nothing is done. However, beyond that, there is a sort of hidden unknown to the player when passing these challenges. Can this be hopped over lower so that they can get the most amount of coins above them? Or can they even be smashed through the rock via a trick? The analogous nature is clearly felt by the player. There's a large difference between flying over a chasm or just barely making it over. The player can land a flip with room to spare, or risk crashing and ending the run. Even the progression has a lower analogous system with the placement of coins, enticing the player to perform an optimal jump of a ramp to gather the most amount of coins possible within the jump. To add variety to the game, goals are a part of a progression system, asking the player to do different things. Some of these goals are simpler, with the main goal being that the player plays longer. Some goals, however, interact better with the mechanics of the game, making the player play in separate ways. One such example is a goal that asks the player to get 2 separate power-ups in one run. The player learns through the runs that the power-ups usually spawn near the bottom of grinds, and it's better to take the bottom path of grind rails. Over time, the player learns that they can manipulate the tilt of the character to avoid the rails and land at the bottom. The goal is pushed to sort of intrinsic tutorials to help the player better learn the small intricacies of the system, helping them master the game. Finally, the last variety includes different characters and items, all helping shape new experiences with the game by changing what the player is familiar with. Personally, some of the goals were frustrating to complete due to a lack of choice for progression. The aforementioned goal, including the 2 power-ups, was affected by randomness, and the areas that they appeared at didn't allow for much reaction time to get them. After 7 to 8 runs on achieving that specific goal, I felt frustrated by lack of progression. While the immersion tutorial is important for player engagement, the road there could have been smoothed out. Some mechanics also felt unused, such as the llama collecting, which doesn't add to any progression outside the goals. Despite the hiccups, Alto's Adventure was an excellent game, one that I will be returning to for its deep, interconnected gameplay derived for its simplistic controls. Learning the mastery of the system as well as the progression helps create meaningful gameplay that pushes the player to keep playing. I enjoyed this game's deceivingly simple gameplay and cannot wait for what it has in store, with new items and characters to change up the game.